everybody. It must be Monday night. I must be Spike Cohen, and you must be whoever you are, because this is Culture of Winning, and I am Spike Cohen, making this Spike Cohen's Culture of Winning. If you don't know what Culture of Winning is, if this is your first time watching it, welcome. And welcome, of course, to everyone who's been watching it. Culture of Winning is a show where we talk to libertarians who have been elected to office. And I know what you're probably thinking. I didn't know that there is such a thing. That actually does happen all the time. And if you've been watching it, you've been hearing from all sorts of libertarians. There are actually hundreds of libertarians who have been elected to office across the country. And so the purpose of the show is to talk to them, to see what got them into running, what their biggest challenges were, how they were able to succeed, what they're able to do now that they're in office, and to build a blueprint for how libertarians can win their elections across the country. So let's get into it. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce my next guest. He is the park commissioner of the, I believe, Collinsville, Illinois Recreation Board. I think I said that correctly. We're all about to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, please welcome to the show my next guest, Mr. Aaron Wright. Aaron, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, so throughout this conversation, I'll be referring to the Collinsville Area Recreation District in the shorthand of CARD. But yeah, I'm a one of five park commissioners in this special park district. Special recreation district is what Illinois calls them.
So we're going to call it CARD.
I'm going to keep saying card, and that might throw you off. And I say cardboard, and that's really kind of off-putting.
Oh, wow,
But,
the cardboard.
Cardboard. That's right. I'm a member of cardboard.
I love it.
So,
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
I'm really excited to be here, Spike. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. So let's get right into it. Every time I have a libertarian on for the first time, I ask, what is it that brought you to libertarianism and to the Libertarian Party? Was it kind of an aha moment or sort of a gradual evolution of time? Every libertarian has their story. Tell us the Aaron Wright story.
All right. Well, it's a long story because I'm old, but back in the 90s when I was coming up as a teenager, I kind of knew I was a very hardcore freedom guy. Freedom was like my top value, I should say, and I got that from my dad. I got that from his best friend as well. And the classic story: being a libertarian before you know what that word means.
Right.
Went ahead, went in the Army, transferred out of active service in the National Guard. I was in the Guard when the Iraq War popped off, and initially I was for it, so I went through kind of a short neocon phase, if you will, which is kind of embarrassing, but I think a lot of people did during that time. There was a lot of fervor around the 9/11 attacks,
Yep.
and all that, and so long story I won't get into. I missed going to Iraq by 8 calendar days because of the way my contract ended, and I was just checked out of the Guard. And by 2005, 2006, that neocon phase was completely over, and I could not believe that our men and women, very many that I know, and I was just in that culture, starting in 95 through 2003 there. I couldn't believe that these wars were still going on. So I got very black-pilled, if you will, on the whole situation. And I was kind of hopeless until Ron Paul came along in 08, and I couldn't believe that this guy was allowed to say these things on TV. I could not. and that just sort of like woke me up, and I said, wait a minute. You can say this stuff to people, and it's amazing. And so I went through the whole Ron Paul thing in 08, and then by that kind of faded away when he didn't win. And in 09, I was trying to connect with the local libertarians here in the Southwest Illinois region, and they'd been inactive for a while. And in like late 09, the guy that had been organizing them before sort of popped back up, wanted to reorganize, and that's when I got involved. So we got our local chapter going again, and we went through a bunch of years of the same 4 people meeting, in the same place. But that's what brought me in, and there was some quiet years there from like maybe 2010 to 2014. It was kind of not a lot going on or whatever, but we were still trying to do our thing and get something going. So that's kind of the origin story, I guess, if you will, and how I got into libertarian party,
And
libertarian activism, that kind of stuff.
and it is shockingly similar to mine, and which is not odd. I mean, we hear this time and time and time again, especially people around our age, right? 9/11 got us completely, horrified and angry and scared, and we completely bought into what the media and government were telling us, hook, line, and sinker, and we bought into the need to invade the world to keep us safe and to spread democracy or whatever nonsense. And Ron Paul and another guy that I like a lot is Matt Kibbe. These were libertarians who were talking to conservatives saying, hey guys, this is a really bad idea. And if you look historically, this is what government does. They use things as a pretext to start wars and create problems, and it doesn't end well. And we didn't believe them then, but eventually we get disabused of our wrongful notions by the reality of how it plays out, and then what they said to us lands and makes sense. So that's what brought you to. Well, I'm glad that you welcome to the party with me. It's literally the exact same thing. So let's talk about the cardboard or the card
Yes.
the board the let's talk about card. And for those who are just tuning in, this is the Collinsville Area Recreation Division Board or
District. That's
district.
correct. Yep.
Sorry, district board
Yep.
or cardboard, which I
Correct.
think that's more appropriate to call it cardboard. Talk to me about what cardboard is, and talk to me about why you decided that you wanted to run for cardboard commissioner.
Okay. So again, this is a long story. So stop me at any time because I'm just going to start rattling off years and numbers and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So in Illinois, we have this thing called a special recreation district because Illinois, if it's good at one thing, is coming up with multiple layers of government that really just shouldn't exist.
Yes.
And so we have this, and sometime in the early 90s, the people in this area, an organization to get a special recreation district in this area came about, and it was passed by the voters, and then it came into existence. As soon as it did, it borrowed money, built a water park. It's a very nice water park. And then within a decade, it was buying up a bunch of land in the middle of town. It built like a heritage farm. It was maintaining the parks that the city already had in existence, right? So they owned them and they were operating them. But as soon as the recreation district came into effect, then those parks were turned over to the recreation district for maintenance and everything. And so sometime in the middle 2000s, I don't really know how it came about. I guess the people who were on the board decided to do all this. These guys start borrowing money left and right. There was a golf course down here that went into bankruptcy, and they were trying to sell this golf course privately for $2.5 million. Nobody's buying. Okay. And so they're in bankruptcy court, and someone familiar with the case came to the board and said, hey, wouldn't you guys like to have a municipal golf course? We got a golf course right here that's in bankruptcy. And they said, well, what'll it take to get this golf course? And the guy says, I believe this is one of the attorneys in the case, completely a disinterested party. He says, well, I believe the judge will accept the deal if you go in for about $5 million.
Oh God.
And so they're like, yeah, let's do that. So they buy this golf course for $5 million. Okay.
It couldn't sell for $2.5 million.
That's why I led with that.
Yeah.
And they didn't get to look at the books. They didn't get to do like a financial study or anything like that. Right. It's just, well, the judge will take $5 million and
I bet he will.
Sure. It'll get approved. Yeah.
I'm sure.
And that'll make all the creditors whole. So this was like a little mini bailout. Right.
Yes.
So then along with that, pardon me, along with this overpriced golf course, they bought a little parcel of land that's next to like a wetlands. There's a 220 acre wetlands over here that the county maintains. They bought like 8 acres in front of that at like $165,000, which is over $20,000 an acre for swampland. And that actually turned into like an entrance for the wetlands. So the only part that the taxpayers here were maintaining was like a parking lot. It's the only piece of the wetlands that actually had a maintainable thing on it. But anyway,
right.
So they overpaid for that. And then what else did they do? They bought this other park up in Maryville so the Collinsville Area Recreation District is kind of comprises 2 towns, right? So there's Collinsville and there's Maryville. And Maryville is kind of like a little sub town to Collinsville. Don't tell them that, but that's kind of how it is. And so they're not getting anything out of the district, right? So the board's going to throw them a bone. They're going to build a park up in Maryville. So they pay, oh goodness, it was around $5 million again to buy like 52 acres. They built $1 million maintenance shed on it. They put up a radio tower so that they could have ground radio because cell phones apparently weren't very good in 2000.
Yeah, I was ground radio.
Ground radio, and it worked for like a year. And then $5 million facility has one playground, one pavilion, and a composting restroom. Because they
and a ground radio tower.
And a ground radio tower, but that wasn't for the guests. So anyway, so all this stuff's going on, and they're issuing bonds for this stuff, right?
Right.
So skip a few. Okay, so if you remember 2010 was the big Tea Party movement. Okay.
Yes.
So the local Republicans like woke up to this and they're like, whoa, what's going on? Because we were just coming off the heels of the city over here spending like $50 million building a big retail center over here, okay? So like, man, we got 25,000 people in this town and we're 50 million in debt. That seems like a lot. Then Card comes along and they've bonded up $30 million before all this is said and done. Okay. So
25,000 people and you've got a combined $80 million in debt.
Correct.
That is more than $3,000 per person in municipal debt.
Yeah, municipal debt. That's right. So so all this is going on. Well, the Tea Party like is kind of firing up at the same time.
Yeah.
And a group of local Republicans started this little group called Card Watch. And all of a sudden, this rec district went from nobody's even paying any attention to it to there's 100 people at the meeting complaining about what they're doing. So that was a great development. But they ran a couple people to get on that board to try to slow things down. And they got 2 people on the board, and that really wasn't enough to take over. But then they got into this scheme with the bonds where, going back to the golf course, they issued these bonds called alternative revenue source bonds. Now, this is getting really technical. Everybody's going to check out right here. But alternate revenue source bond means that you can't tax directly for the bond.
Okay.
But they weren't making enough off the golf course to actually make the bond payment. So what they were doing was they would abate their taxes 1 year, and then the next year they'd come along and they would issue a short-term bond. And they would use that short-term bond
to pay for God's sake.
To make the annual payment on the long-term debt. And then they would tax directly on that short-term bond.
Of course.
So you can imagine it's
and
like
so now you're compounding debt because you have this debt, this interest rate, and then this interest rate.
The short-term interest rate's higher, right? Plus the issuing and marketing fees for the bond. So in rough numbers, the bond service is about $1 million a year, okay? But it's costing 1.1 to pay it. So anyway,
for 25,000 people.
Right. So they had a group of guys on there in 2015, 2016 that had come up with this idea that we're going to not abate the tax, right? We're going to violate the terms of the bond.
Okay.
And then once it's violated, then that ship has sailed and we're going to start taxing directly and we're going to stop this little scheme that's going on.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they got on there and they couldn't actually pass it because one of the votes that they had counted on didn't come in. All right. So that led to, now I'd been doing some local activism sort of through this time, concentrating on the city. I was going up to the city and trying to, influence them to do certain things, never with any success. But one of the ladies that knew me sort of through that activity caught me at like Americans for Prosperity training or whatever and said, hey,
okay,
there's a spot open on this board. I think you should run for it. And I said, oh yeah, okay, that sounds interesting. And I'd remembered all these issues that they had. And I thought, oh, okay, great. And so she told me a little bit more about what had been going on. I said, "Oh yeah, for sure. I'll get on there and I'll help you guys out." Um, so some of the libertarians from our local chapter got together, helped me petition. I turned in the packet, and then this is the weird thing. This is what I want your listeners to really latch onto. All this debt, all these crazy schemes, all this weird stuff happening. Right? I ran for this spot uncontested. Yeah. So, I mean, I won like the Democrats and the Republicans normally do, right? I just kind of walked into the office. So that was really an odd thing. Now, at this time, too, there was another guy. There was a guy who was working from the outside, trying to disconnect areas from the district, and there's a legal mechanism to do that for people who own properties on the edges of the district. You can petition to get out of the district.
Right.
So he was doing that, and then once we got on the board, well, he also ended up running for an unexpired term, and I'm not sure if that unexpired term came up later or how that actually worked. But anyway, so we end up on the board together, and we start letting these people out, right? So people are coming in with the petitions, and we're letting them out of the district, right? And then it all sort of culminates, and this is the payoff. We just a group of people decide they're going to petition to actually dissolve the park district.
Right.
Okay. And so that group of people had to collect like 5,000 signatures from the community. And they ended up turning in like 7,000. And then the board had to vote to put that on the ballot. So we put that on the ballot in 2018 in the general election when we knew there'd be good turnout. And sure enough, it passed 80% in favor, right? And so kind of behind the scenes, I mean, this is an open detail, but I mean, the board members were working to help with this, right? Along with a lot of local Republicans and some other activists, and our local Libertarian group was helping.
Right, because you actually wanted to dissolve this so that no more spending could happen, and now you're just taking care of the existing debt on the table.
Yep.
So, you know,
Absolutely.
you mentioned that this was a uncontested race. You just kind of walked into the race. Was there any challenge in running or in even the run up to the run? What would you say in all of this? What would you say your biggest challenge was? And maybe not even related to the actual campaign itself. With all of this prior to you actually getting on the board, what would you say was your biggest challenge?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge was I'd never run a campaign before, so I was pretty nervous about what was going to take place. And so and I was used to petitioning in the summer because I was always petitioning for, you know, the Libertarian candidates and whatnot. So that was always happening during the summer. Well, now I'm having a petition in the wintertime. I'm going to people's doors because there aren't events. So I'm like standing on somebody's doorstep going, hey, you know, I want to represent you in this way.
Right.
And so that was a lot different for me. And then once I filed the paperwork, I mean, I knew how to file the paperwork and everything. It's easy enough to follow the candidate guide. And then I'd call up there to the place every couple of days and ask them, you know, has anybody else filed? And they're like, nope, you're the only one that's filed yet. And then so the same thing during the inspection period and the challenge period, you know, I called up and I said, no news is good news. He goes, no, nobody looked at anything. You know, the ballot is what it is. And I was like, okay. And so,
okay. Yeah.
Still, I still wanted to campaign. I still made some flyers. And I went to a campaign event that the city held down at the convention center down here and talked to a few people. And I don't know, it was kind of a weird experience just not having any competition. And it was an eye opener because, you know, the way this whole thing was off the rails. And I guess what really scares me, what really makes me think about it is that I think there's a sense to which the people who instituted this district were very upset that there were some people that were actively trying to actually get rid of it, or make it more efficient or cost less or whatever. However, they weren't upset enough to actually attempt to defend the board by filing a candidate, right? So
Right.
when the battle was to take place, they were not there.
They weren't battling. And this is an
Right.
important lesson, guys. So, this is anyone who's been watching these episodes, we've seen everything from people who had hard fought races, people like Trisha Butler, Kalish Morrow, people who had really, really tough races, 2 and 3-way races where there was, mudslinging and they fought tooth and nail to be able to get to win their race. And then we had people who not only ran uncontested, but actually ran on a strategy of not telling anyone that they were running because they didn't want anyone else to know and get the bright idea to run against them or whatever. And we've seen everything in between. And the lesson to take away from this, folks, is that your area can be wildly different than someone else's. You may go in and find that there are a bunch of different spots that no one is running for, and all you literally have to do is go in and file your name, and you're just going to walk in and get it. And it's like a relatively influential seat in your local area. It's not as sexy as running for Congress or Senate or whatever, but you got a much better chance of winning it. You might have 100% chance of winning it, and you're actually going to do things that affect the day-to-day lives of yourself and other people in whatever your jurisdiction is. And this is a perfect example of that. That he is able to stop what was an absolutely insane, I would argue, criminal amount of spending that was happening, because they could, by a bunch of people who were so undedicated to the whole thing that the moment anyone picked a fight with them, they went, all right, well, I don't like it, but I guess they're gonna run now. Like this happens all the time where these aren't even these sinister masterminds. They're just inept, and they go in and start spending money because they can, and because they have a blank check. And then, it takes ineptitude to create a bond, to use a bond that you can't tax directly. So then you do short-term taxes with even higher interest rates to pay, or short-term bonds with even higher interest rates that can be taxed to pay off that one. This sounds like people who have no clue what they're doing. And so then you come in and they're like, they have no clue to how to stop you from defeating them and undoing or ending their reign of idiocy. This is the kind of stuff that happens, folks, when when you're connected in your area, when you know what's going on, and when you see these openings where you can literally just waltz in and make major changes. So, I have to ask before we go to the next question, are you connected in the community? It sounds like you had a pretty good bead on what was going on in your community. Were you fairly, if not well known, at least well regarded and knowledgeable of what was happening in your community prior to running?
Yeah, I'm really glad you opened that line of thought there, because I think this is the biggest thing that libertarians need to get, is that we go to our meetings, back to like what I was saying, the same 4 people going to the meetings and everything.
Right.
You're never going to do anything if you don't get outside of that. You're not going to know the intel about what's going on and what your different units of government are doing unless you get out there and you attend the meetings and you start networking. And depending on what you find, most likely you'll find a small group of activists who are paying attention and are trying to keep track of these things. If you go out and you find that there's not that, then you've got to be that. You have to start messaging to people and say, hey, look, these are these problems, and maybe drum up some sort of activity of that type. And when you do that, people begin to know you. They see you at the meeting. They know who you are. They know, basically more or less what you stand for. You're going to talk to people, these people, network with these people. I've got, I would say, like a small group of people who, like I'm running for township right now. I've got a small group of people that support me very, I don't know how to say it. They very strongly support me because of those other activities that they know of. And then you get in there, you find people that you trust, and they'll say, hey, what about this issue? What about that issue? It's going to be a lot of people that identify as independent. Maybe at the local level, I know Republican's kind of a dirty word lately, around libertarians and things, and we're not just the Libertarian Light Party, or I'm sorry, the Republican Light Party, and I'm completely sympathetic with that. But when it comes to local spending issues and things like that, it's going to be your local Republicans who are upset about those types of things.
Right. For specifically like a spending or taxing or bond thing, it's probably going to be Republicans. Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of the information that I got about this, there's one of these guys that's on the board with me. He's an active Republican. He's got some sort of position in the county party and everything. I'm telling you, this guy is I call him the taxpayer's best friend. He knows all the numbers. He knows all the what's and wherefores and the procedures and all the definitions. Right. And without that type of knowledge, it's really hard to try to tackle these issues or try to message against them or try to organize. So you've got to make connections with those people.
Yep.
And
you got to
let them know that you're on their side. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to make connections with people outside of the party. And here's the thing. You might eventually bring that guy into the Libertarian Party. There's a possibility of that. You may very well do that because he is seeing that libertarians, and he may see that, libertarians are the way we are about taxes. We're that way with everything. We're that way with government accountability when it comes to, police brutality, or when it comes to the war on drugs, or when it comes to anything else. And by you having that rapport and that, that relationship with him, that good working relationship with him, you can potentially influence him, coming in. Or if nothing else, just having an ally on the things that you guys can work together on. And for those who live in a city where the major thing is something criminal justice related, you may find that it's Democrats that you may be working primarily with, and that's fine as well. And ultimately you form whatever relationships you can that lend themselves to working on that thing. So, usually, so what would you say, and it sounds like you already kind of answered this, but, what would you say is your biggest lesson that you learned from all of this? If someone came to you and said, "Hey, listen, Aaron, I'm thinking of running for, whatever office." Is it that they need to be locally connected, or is it something, what would you say is that biggest lesson you would want them to learn from all this?
Yeah, you have to, in my opinion, the biggest mistake that you can make is to just decide that you've got the best ideas, because we do have the best ideas. Okay. I mean, let's be honest, but your best ideas are not going to get you into office. You have to have done something for the people who you're asking for their vote. The people have to know you. So when you go to their doorstep, or they see your sign, or they go online and look at your stuff, they have to know that you've done something for them. So, I mean, I've got history with people going all the way back to 2012 of speaking at city meetings and messaging to them, bringing stuff to their door, to a lesser extent. I mean, that started more recently. But, when I go to somebody and they say, "Why should I vote for you?" I can say, "Well, here are some things that I have done for you already." If you don't have that, you are literally nobody. You have to accept the fact that if you've never stepped foot in one of these meetings, or you've never taken on one of these issues, or you've never handed somebody a pamphlet, the first time you do, you are absolutely nobody to them. They don't care what you have to say. They're not going to, you've got to build some sort of trust and rapport with them first.
Right.
And some people are not going to. I mean, if you go to somebody and you say, "Hey, I'm with Decriminalized Nature, and this is what we want to do," they're going to, they may not take your side on that one. But you go say, "Hey, I want to lower your property taxes." That's a big thing in Illinois. I don't know, some other people in other areas, maybe that's not such a big thing, but I go say, "Hey, I want to lower your property taxes." They say, "Who are you and what have you done for me?" Well, I've tackled these several issues, and I've already helped to lower your property taxes.
Right, exactly.
Okay?
And I want to expand on that. Yeah.
Right. I did some of that in office, but I've done some of that by helping other people defeat like some sales tax initiatives and stuff.
Yeah.
But I put out, I don't expect everybody to do this, but I put out some videos that got like 30,000 views when the city was trying to expand their sales tax. More people watched my video railing against the tax than actually voted, and it was defeated handily. So, I mean, there's that type of stuff that you got to be doing before you can go and tell someone that you deserve their vote. You really do. You got to do something for them outside of that.
Even at the local level. Even at the local level. Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Most importantly at the local level.
Yeah, exactly.
Most importantly at the local level. I think it all springs from the local level. If you look at, Man, if you look at well, some of these guys are like all stars, right? Like Obama just like went from the Illinois Senate on up to the presidency. But
Right.
if you look at a guy like John Shimkus, he was in Congress since like '98 or something like that. He was at this township that I'm trying to run for right now. That's where he got to start, and his family was in the township after he left, so he had that local uh, sort of cred
Right.
before he was able to go to Congress. And I don't think if he hadn't been there, then he wouldn't have made it anywhere higher. And that, I mean,
Yep.
that rule applies to Republicans as well to some extent. You have to be somebody at the local level first.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's crucial, and like you said, especially at the local level. The number one thing people care about. You can get away with doing the issues-based thing when you're running at a statewide level. Even then people want to know who you are and what you've done. But when you're local, a lot of times it's just like, who are you, and do I know you,
Mm-hmm.
and is there a reason to think you care about me and my community since we're neighbors? How well do I know my neighbor, right? So it's a big deal to have that connection. So usually the question I close with, Aaron, is I say, now that you've been elected, what are your main goals? Well, you already achieved your main goal, which is to abolish or dismantle the organization that you're on. You're now basically a placeholder until your term's up, and are basically just overseeing the paying off of the existing debts that were run up by the organization that you successfully dismantled. So rather than ask you that, let's talk about the run that you're doing now. So you're now running for, is it town council?
Yeah, well, township. So it's hard.
Okay.
I understand if you're not from Illinois, it's hard to keep track with all these ridiculous
Yeah,
names.
I
And
know this. I know that Illinois has more government departments and agencies per capita, or levels of government, actual governments in or government districts and things like that per capita than any other state, and it's not even close. In fact, they have more than any other state, including states like California and Texas that have much higher populations. They have
oh
it's
yeah,
not even close how many per cap. So anyway, go ahead.
yeah. So we have there's a thing called Collinsville Township, and it's just a big square on the map. And so they have a board. They have three main functions. They operate a road and bridge department. They do general assistance, which is sort of like a replica of like a welfare program. I don't think a lot of people know that their township has a general assistance program. And then they run an assessor's office. And I did the math today, and it accounts for about 7.5% of somebody who lives in either one of these cities or the unincorporated areas like I live now. About 7.5% of their tax bill. And Illinois, we have some of the highest property taxes in the nation, so
Right.
that's not trivial. And so I'm going to try to take my successes and a little bit of reputation from my time on the card board and parlay that into a win for the board of trustees for this township. Uh, Now I don't know how successful that'll be. I do know, like I say, the card dissolution vote passed 80% in favor. That doesn't mean that I'm going to get 80% of the vote. That's for sure. It
Right.
is going to be a hotly contested race. There's what I would like to call the other side, which is a group of people who are kind of using the township for patronage and handouts and those types of things. Which again, you should expect that
Yeah.
this is going on. I'm telling you guys, if you go to your local meetings, you're going to find that stuff is going on all the time. But
Well, you
so
don't run up $50 million in debt
yeah, actually, that was
without.
the city of Collinsville, which is
Oh,
which is
okay.
not the same unit of government as the Collinsville Township, nor when it existed was it the same level as the Collinsville Area Recreation District. That's how insane it is here. But yeah, they run up a bunch of debt. They appoint their friends to things.
Yeah.
They you know our roads department runs at like a 2.5x multiple to the surrounding townships. So there's obviously something going on, and I want to get in there and see what the budgets are and see what we can do to help the community pay a little bit lower property taxes.
And because he has already successfully done this in another position, on a specific issue, he's now, instead of just saying, hey, I'm Aaron Wright, I think our taxes are too damn high and I'm going to go in and fix this, he can say, hey, I'm Aaron Wright. I have a history. I think our taxes are too damn high, and I've already lowered them quite a bit by ending the, or at least stop the increases of them quite a bit by, running on the, for cardboard and successfully dismantling it. And I want to take that success, as you said, take that success to the Collinsville Township and apply it there, because it's even worse there. You think it was bad at cardboard, it's even worse at the township. And he now has a compelling, with people he's already connected with, he has a compelling argument for why he should now be elected to this other position. And that's not a guarantee he'll win it or anything else. Like he said, it's a highly going to be more contested, hotly contested race, but he's going to be in a far better position to do it than if he had just gone straight to that, much less going straight to Congress or whatever. He was able to go in with an actionable thing, achieve that, and now move on to the next actionable thing. And if he's able to accomplish that, it will largely be because he built a series of steps of successes to then be able to go and do this. So this is exactly what we talk about on this show. This is how libertarians can win, not just in elections, but in actual policy differences. Imagine libertarians, thousands of libertarians running across the country in these types of positions, and many of them, hundreds of them, or even a couple thousand of them getting elected, and being able to do this and multiply it out on a mass scale. Not only will people see immediate benefit as a result of it, but then they'll also be able to say, wow, they did so great in this, water district or parks district or city council or whatever. I think I could trust them for state rep, state senate, mayor, governor, Congress, Senate, the White House. It happens quickly, it snowballs quickly, and it's by building the foundation. So listen, Aaron, I'm so happy that you came on the show. Thanks so much for coming on. Before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to say anything that you want to say, anything that you thought that we didn't get a chance to cover. I want you to make sure that you got to say everything you wanted. Aaron Wright, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I'm going to make one last point, and then I'm going to ask for people to support me, because what would politics be without asking for money? If you're at zero, if you haven't done anything at all in your community, the time to start is now.
Yep.
There's probably an election coming up in 2 years, maybe 3 years, depending on how the cycles work. There's issues that need libertarians' attention. There's issues that we need to be messaging for in your local area. Right now with COVID may be actually the perfect time to get involved, because a lot of these local units are doing their meetings via Zoom. So you can start getting involved right from the comfort of your own home. Download the agendas, look at the meeting notes, use FOIA, attend the meetings, find out what the issues are, and establish yourself as somebody who is credible on the issues and can run for one of these positions. And then find out what positions are important by connecting with the people in the local area, hopefully, and eventually running for it and winning. And I really would just be over the moon if, like you said, thousands of libertarians were doing this. I think it would be the greatest thing that's ever happened to our party in its entire history. Very last thing, go to write4township.com if you want to support me. I'm probably going to spend about $3,000 on this race. And if you guys kick a few bucks my way, that would be greatly appreciated. And I'm not going to try to tell you what to do if you don't want to do that. So, Spike, I really appreciate you having me on, sir.
Oh, absolutely, man. Listen, I'm honored to have you on. I loved your story. When it was pitched to me, like, hey, how would you like to have someone on to abolish the government agency? I'm like, let's do it right now. So no, I'm thank you so much for coming on. And just to make that clear, so it's Wright for Township. So WRIGHT FOR, not the number 4.
Correct.
FOR.
No numerical characters. Yeah.
Yeah. FOR township.com. And are you on Facebook as well, Aaron Wright for
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Aaron Wright for Collinsville Township is my Facebook page. I've got some videos on there if you want to assault your eyeballs with those. So should be some decent stuff. So
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. We certainly support your run. Mazel tov to you, and hopefully onward and upward to, maybe you can abolish that township too. Go and listen. If you are the destroyer of municipalities, let's just work that all the way up. We can achieve Libertopia in our time. Hey, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And folks, thank you for watching this episode of Culture of Winning. I'm telling you, these are getting better with each one, right? This is getting better. Mostly I'm getting better. But the show concept, what we are seeing over and over again is that when you do the work to make it known that you are someone in your community who can be trusted, you can go in and make amazing things happen. So let's do that. Let's be the people in our communities that are making amazing things happen. So thank you again for tuning into this episode of Culture of Winning, this 15th episode we're on. So join us next week for the next Culture of Winning, our 16th episode. I will be having Joe Hartman on. He will be my guest next week, Monday the 25th. Same spike place, same spike time. And guys, have a great week. And I look forward to seeing you and seeing you next week. And let's start winning stuff, guys. Let's stay tuned on this and let's really start winning. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Spike Cohen, and you are the power. God bless, guys.